My birthday dinner should have felt warm. Candles glowing, music soft, everyone smiling like they meant it. But something in the air felt wrong, tight, heavy, waiting. Then my rich grandpa lifted his glass. He didn't toast. He didn't congratulate me. He just stared right at me, smiling like he already knew the ending to a story I hadn't even begun. "So," he said loudly enough for the whole table to hear, "how do you spend your $3.5 million trust fund?" My world stopped. I blinked. Once. Twice. My fork slipped from my hand. What trust fund? The room shattered into silence. My mom froze with her napkin halfway to her mouth. My dad's face drained of color, like someone had pulled the plug on his soul. They didn't even look at me, they looked at him. Grandpa's smile faded. Slowly, like a man watching a lie come to life right in front of him. He set his glass down with a soft click that felt louder than thunder. "Where?" he asked calmly. "Did it go?" No one breathed. No one moved. The whole birthday table turned into a courtroom. My heart raced so fast it hurt. Trust fund? $3.5 million? I was behind on rent. My phone bill was late. I skipped meals to save money. Nothing in my life looked like someone with a fortune waiting for them. And in that moment, staring at my parents shaking hands, I understood one thing with painful clarity. This wasn't a birthday. This was a trap. And the truth was about to come out. My name is Sarah. I just turned 27. And until that moment, I thought I understood my life. I worked full-time at a small marketing firm. I lived in a tiny apartment with creaky floors and a heater that barely worked. Most days, I chose between groceries or gas. Some nights, dinner was whatever was left in the pantry. Nothing about my life came close to someone who had a trust fund, especially not a $3.5 million one. But my parents never talked about money. They talked about discipline, budgeting, being smart, but never about help. Never about something that could have changed my entire life. I thought the struggle was my fault. I thought being tired, broke, and scared was just adulthood. But now, staring at my parents' pale faces, I realized I wasn't unlucky. I was kept in the dark. Grandpa leaned forward slightly. "Sarah," he said, voice steady. "You truly didn't know?" I shook my head. "No, I didn't know anything." Mom spoke first, too fast. "This must be a mistake." Dad nodded hard. Yes, exactly. A misunderstanding. "We can talk later, Dad." But Grandpa didn't look away. "It's not a misunderstanding," he said. "I set that trust up when Sarah was born. I gave it to you both to manage until she turned 25. My parents froze. 25. 2 years ago. 2 years of them watching me struggle, begging me to be patient, telling me to learn responsibility, while they held millions behind their backs. My hands shook under the table. For the first time tonight, something stronger than fear filled my chest. Anger. Dad cleared his throat, but the sound came out tight and nervous. "Sarah is confused," he said. "She must have misunderstood something." Mom nodded quickly. Too quickly. "Yes, exactly. There's no need to make a scene. It's her birthday. Let's not ruin it." But Grandpa didn't even blink. He looked straight at them, calm but sharp. "The trust fund was never a secret to me," he said. "Only to her. I gave you full access so you could guide her when the time came." Mom's fingers twisted around her napkin. Dad's jaw clenched so hard I could hear his teeth grind. They were scared. Really scared. Grandpa continued, voice controlled but colder than I'd ever heard it. "I checked the account last week. It should have over $3 million in it. Yet somehow, it's almost empty." Mom flinched. Dad looked away. My stomach twisted. Almost empty? Where did it go? Who touched it? How long had they known? Grandpa raised a hand, signaling for the waiter. "Private room. Now." The entire table went silent as we were guided into a smaller room with closed doors. It felt like stepping into a courtroom. Grandpa turned to my parents. I want the truth, he said. Right now. Mom tried to smile, but her lips shook. We can explain. Dad's voice cracked as he tried to speak. There were expenses, emergencies, investments. You don't understand. Grandpa cut him off with one sharp look. I understand exactly one thing, he said. You had access to money that was never yours. And now the person it belonged to doesn't even know it existed. The room went still. My heart pounded hard enough to hurt. This wasn't a mistake. This was betrayal. Dad cleared his throat, but the sound came out tight and nervous. Sarah is confused, he said. She must have misunderstood something. Mom nodded quickly. Too quickly. Yes, exactly. There's no need to make a scene. It's her birthday. Let's not ruin it. But Grandpa didn't even blink. He looked straight at them, calm but sharp. The trust fund was never a secret to me, he said. Only to her. I gave you full access so you could guide her when the time came. Mom's fingers twisted around her napkin. Dad's jaw clenched so hard I could hear his teeth grind. They were scared. Really scared. Grandpa continued, voice controlled but colder than I'd ever heard it. I checked the account last week. It should have over $3 million in it. Yet somehow it's almost empty. Mom flinched. Dad looked away. My stomach twisted. Almost empty? Where did it go? Who touched it? How long had they known? Grandpa raised a hand, signaling for the waiter. Private room. No. The entire table went silent as we were guided into a smaller room with closed doors. It felt like stepping into a courtroom. Grandpa turned to my parents. I want the truth, he said. Right now. Mom tried to smile, but her lips shook. We can explain. Dad's voice cracked as he tried to speak. There were expenses, emergencies, investments. You don't understand. Grandpa cut him off with one sharp look. I understand exactly one thing, he said. You had access to money that was never yours. And now the person it belonged to doesn't even know it existed. The room went still. My heart pounded hard enough to hurt. This wasn't a mistake. This was betrayal. The silence in the room felt heavy, like the air itself didn't want to move. Grandpa leaned back in his chair, eyes fixed on my parents. Show me the account statements, he said. Simple words. But they landed like a hammer. Mom swallowed hard. We don't have them with us. Dad nodded quickly. They're at home. We can bring them another time. This isn't the place. Grandpa's expression didn't change. Then where's the money? He asked again, slower this time. Dad opened his mouth, closed it, then tried again. There were expenses. We handled things the best we could. Handled what? Grandpa asked. His voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Mom's eyes darted around the room as if looking for a way out. We don't need to dig into this tonight, she whispered. It's Sarah's birthday. Please. But Grandpa wasn't moved. Sarah, he said gently, may I see where you live? My breath caught. He wanted to know everything. He wanted to see the truth for himself. Mom shot up from her chair. No, Dad, that's not necessary. Her place is. Enough, Grandpa said. His tone cut her off instantly. Dad tried next. She's independent. She doesn't want you to. It's not their decision, Grandpa said. He looked at me. It's yours. I looked down at my hands. Hands that had counted every dollar. Hands that had held overdue bills. Hands that had shaken from stress more times than I could remember. I nodded. Grandpa stood slowly. Then we go now. Mom's face drained of color. Dad's voice cracked. You can't just. I can, Grandpa said, and I will. And at that moment, I realized something huge. My parents weren't just worried. They were terrified. The drive to my apartment felt unreal. The city lights passed by the windows, bright and cheerful, nothing like the storm brewing inside my chest. Grandpa sat beside me in silence, not judging, not rushing, just waiting. When we pulled up to my building, he didn't speak. He just stared. The cracked steps, the broken light above the door, the peeling paint on the railing. His jaw tightened. "This is where you live?" he asked quietly. I nodded, embarrassed. I'd never felt ashamed of my place before. It was small, yes, but it was mine. But now, in front of him, it looked like a crime scene. Inside, I tried to make the space look less sad. I kicked a stack of overdue bills under the couch. I closed the door to the bathroom with the leaking pipe. I pulled the blanket over the couch cushions to hide the tears in the fabric. But Grandpa noticed everything. He looked at the tiny stove, the second-hand table, the makeshift heater in the corner. He touched the wall gently, paint dust coming off on his fingers. "Sarah," he said, voice low, "you're living like this while $3.5 million was meant for you?" My throat closed. "I didn't know," I whispered. "I thought this was just life." Grandpa turned toward me fully. "No," he said. "This is the life they forced on you." I felt hot tears forming, but I held them back. For the first time, I told him everything. The missed meals, the debt, the fear of rent, the nights I cried from stress. He listened to every word. Not once did he look away. When I finished, he took a slow breath. "Tomorrow," he said, "we get the truth, and we take back what's yours." For the first time in years, I didn't feel alone. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my parents' faces at the restaurant, pale, shaking, exposed. I kept hearing Grandpa's voice in my head. "Tomorrow, we take back what's yours." Morning came fast. The sunlight through my thin curtains felt strange, almost too bright for a day like this. When I stepped into the living room, Grandpa was already awake. He sat at my tiny table with a stack of papers, his glasses low on his nose, his expression sharp and focused. He didn't look tired. He looked ready. "Good morning, Sarah," he said. "We have work to do." I sat across from him. "What is all this?" "Records," he said. "Old statements, emails, contracts. Everything I kept from the day I set up your trust." There was a firmness in his voice I had never heard before, not anger, not sadness, but purpose. "I should have checked sooner," he said quietly. "I trusted them too much." I shook my head. "You couldn't have known." He looked at me for a long moment. "No, but I know now." He slid one paper toward me, a list of withdrawals. Dates, amounts. My name printed across the top. My chest tightened. "So much," I whispered. "All gone." "Not all," Grandpa said, "and not without consequences." He closed the folder, stood, and reached for his cane. "We're meeting my lawyer in 1 hour," he said. "They will explain everything, and your parents will finally face what they've done." I felt nervous, sick, even. But beneath all that fear was something stronger. Strength! The kind I didn't know I had. Grandpa placed a hand on my shoulder. "You're not fighting alone anymore, Sarah." And for the first time, I believed him. Grandpa's lawyer worked in a tall glass building downtown, the kind of place where everything looked expensive and quiet. My stomach twisted as we rode the elevator up. I felt small, unsure, but Grandpa stood beside me steady as stone. When the doors opened, my parents were already there. Mom's eyes were red. Dad looked like he hadn't slept. They didn't even say hello. Grandpa didn't greet them either. He just walked past and sat at the head of the long table. His lawyer, Mr. Adams, opened a thick folder. "Let's begin," he said. Dad tried to smile. "We can explain." "No," Grandpa said. "You can answer." Silence. Mr. Adams slid papers across the table. "These are the trust account statements. Every withdrawal, every transfer." Mom reached for the papers with shaking hands. My eyes moved down the list. Luxury store charges, trips, car payments, restaurant bills, renovations. A down payment for a house. My throat tightened. You spent my money, I said quietly, words I never imagined saying in my life. Dad looked up, defensive. We used some of it. $3 million is not some, Grandpa said sharply. Mom's voice cracked. We were going to replace it. When? Grandpa asked. When she turned 30, 40. Never? Dad slammed his hand on the table. We did what we had to do. No, Grandpa said. You did what was easy. And you let Sarah struggle while you lived in comfort. Mom started to cry again. We only wanted her to be responsible. I laughed, bitter and tired. I was responsible. I worked every day. I worried about rent. I skipped meals. You watched me suffer and said nothing. Dad opened his mouth, but Grandpa raised his cane lightly. Enough, he said. His voice was low, steady, final. You didn't just steal money. You stole her future. The room went completely silent, and for the first time, my parents couldn't lie their way out. Mr. Adams cleared his throat and pushed another document toward my parents. This, he said, is the legal action we are preparing. Every account you used, every asset bought with Sarah's trust, all of it will be frozen effective today. Mom gasped. Dad's face drained of color. You can't do that, Dad whispered. Grandpa didn't blink. I already have. Mom shook her head, voice trembling. We need those accounts. The mortgage, the cars, the expenses. Grandpa cut her off. You should have thought about that before you stole from your daughter. Dad leaned forward, angry now. She doesn't deserve all that money. She isn't ready for it. I felt something inside me snap. I've been ready my whole life, I said quietly. I just didn't know it existed. Mom tried again, reaching out. Sarah, sweetheart, we didn't mean harm. We did everything for you. No, I said. You did everything for yourselves. Grandpa nodded at Mr. Adams. Proceed with the transfer. Mr. Adams slid a final paper toward me. This puts the remaining trust funds under your control, Sarah. Your parents will have no access to anything related to your accounts ever again. Dad stood up, voice shaking with rage. This is unfair. You're letting her destroy us. Grandpa tapped his cane once. A single sharp sound. She didn't destroy anything, he said. You destroyed yourselves when you chose greed over your own child. Mom covered her face, sobbing. Dad stared at the floor, defeated. I looked at the paper in front of me, my name printed in bold letters. For years, I thought I wasn't enough. But now the truth was clear. I was never the problem. They were. And for the first time, I felt the balance shift to me. I thought the meeting would be the end of it. But people like my parents don't stop easily. That evening, as I sat on my couch trying to breathe through everything that happened, someone pounded on my door. Hard, angry. Sarah, open this door right now. My chest tightened. I knew that voice. Dad. I hesitated, but then I felt Grandpa's words in my mind. You're not alone anymore. I opened the door a few inches. Dad pushed against it, trying to force his way in, but I held it with everything I had. Mom stood behind him, eyes red, mascara running. How could you do this to us? She cried. We're your parents. I stepped out just enough to face them. No, I said. You did this to yourselves. Dad shook his head, his voice sharp with anger. You're ruining this family. You took everything from us. The house, the accounts, the life we built. I stared at him, stunned at how he twisted it so easily. I didn't take anything, I said. I reclaimed what was mine. Mom reached for me, but I stepped back. You would let us lose everything? She whispered. I felt something heavy lift off my chest as I answered. You watched me lose everything for years. My money, my chances, my peace. And you still expected me to smile. Dad's face twisted. You ungrateful child. At that moment, footsteps sounded in the hallway. Grandpa. He walked up, calm and steady, his voice cold as steel. Leave. No. Dad sputtered. This is between us. No, Grandpa said. This is between greed and consequences. And consequences win today. Mom covered her mouth, tears spilling. Dad looked at me one last time, anger, fear, regret all mixed together. But I didn't look away. I closed the door. Their voices faded down the hall. For the first time in my life, I felt free. The next morning felt different. Quiet, light, safe. I woke up knowing something huge had shifted, not just legally, not just financially, but inside me. Grandpa picked me up and drove me to see a place he wanted me to have. A clean, bright apartment overlooking the city. Sunlight everywhere. A fresh start. This, he said gently, should have always been yours. I walked through the rooms slowly, touching the walls, feeling the calm settle into my bones. No leaking pipes. No overdue bills stacked on the counter. No fear waiting for me at the end of the month. Just space and peace. Grandpa stood beside me at the window. You were never weak, Sarah, he said softly. You were just surrounded by people who made you feel small. I looked down at the city below, cars moving, lights glowing, life happening, and for once I didn't feel left out of it. I felt part of it. I don't know what comes next, I admitted. Everything feels new. Grandpa smiled. That's the gift, he said. A new beginning. One you earned, one you deserve. We stood together in the warm morning light, and something inside me finally settled. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't afraid. I wasn't waiting for approval that would never come. I was done shrinking. And for the first time in my life, the future didn't scare me. It felt open. It felt possible. It felt mine. When Grandpa left, I stood alone in my new apartment, sunlight warming the floor. For the first time in years, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel scared. And I didn't feel like I had to apologize for wanting a life that didn't hurt. I walked to the window and looked out at the city. Everything felt quiet, bright, possible. My parents had taken my money, my time, my peace. But they didn't get the last word. I did. And as I stood there, breathing in a future that finally belonged to me, one thought settled deep in my heart. I'm done surviving. I'm finally living.